to VolleyTalk. We are PowerCore 360, Darian Fiakuski, and this is Billy Glisson. This is our weekly live stream that we do where we answer all things volleyball questions related or talk about different subjects on how to move your body while hitting a volleyball. I'm just going to connect us really quick to a couple of platforms and then we will be good to go. One second, everybody. We're just connecting to our Facebook group, which is a great point. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, then definitely check that out. Billy, do you want to tell them a little bit about what they kind of get on that group?
Sure. It's where we run a master class and all the athlete analyses we do for both jumping and power hitting. That's where we post everything. It is a private group. You do have to ask permission. We do have to grant you permission, but you get in there, you'll see the assessments we do. You'll see the feedback we provide for the athletes, both in vertical jump and power hitting. So it's a great resource if you're wanting to learn as an athlete, a parent, or a coach.
Yeah, definitely. So if you do want to join, there's lots of links on our YouTube channel that you can check out and go from there. All right. Okay. We are just going to get started here. So today for VolleyTalk, we are going to be talking about 3 steps to fixing your shoulder pain or reducing the risk of shoulder injury while playing volleyball. If you have any questions about shoulder pain or why your shoulder hurts or how you should be swinging while playing volleyball, this is a great live stream for you to watch and also ask questions for us because we will be able to answer everything here. We are going to be going through some different exercises or key things that you should look for your shoulders specifically to reduce that pain or reduce injury risk. But like we said, any questions you guys have, and if you want to tell us where you're getting in from, that would be amazing. So we're going to start out by talking about hitting technique overall. So what does this technique look like and how do you hit a ball? I'm going to hand this over to Billy, our expert here.
Yeah, and so let's reiterate is just this is not just for shoulder pain for people who walk around on earth. This is for volleyball hitters, spikers, right? People hitting the ball. So we're going to start with that. I think that there's 3 steps or 3 cues, 3 keys. And the first one is just the technique you're using, the power hitting mechanics you're using. And I'm going to maybe preface all this by saying, if you're having shoulder pain, there's a really good chance that all you're doing is swinging your arm at it and you're not turning your entire body and using the power and the force and everything you can do to hit the ball harder, arm speed, if you would, by using your body. A lot of athletes, a lot of volleyball players specifically are just being told, lift your elbow up, swing your arm at it, and to hit harder, they just tell them to swing harder, right? Or swing your arm faster. And so there's a really good chance if your shoulder hurts, that's probably a lot of what you're doing. So maybe the first simple technique or cue is to just say, hey, look, rotate your entire body. Every other sport in the world, when they throw a ball, hit a ball overhand, they're stepping, they're turning their body away, and then they turn their body through. They're using big, strong, powerful muscles. The arm's still working, but it's working with the forces the entire body can generate. So spreads the forces out, you hit the ball harder, and your shoulder tolerates a lot better anyway. So stop swinging just your arm at it. Rotate your body. Let's start with.
Yeah, that's a good starting point. What are some simple cues, I guess? Let's pretend that we're talking to a right-handed hitter. Obviously, lefties, this would be opposite for you. But what are some cues you could give a right-handed hitter to start?
Sure, and let's even make it more specific. Let's say a right-handed hitter hitting left side, and get your orientation. If you were facing the net as a right-handed hitter hitting left side, we tend to teach everybody to start with your belly button or chest facing the right antenna, just so we've got some orientation to the court, right? So start with that. Let's assume your belly button's facing the right antenna. The first thing we want you to do is just think about the center of your chest. Turn your chest, not your belly button. Your belly button stays at the right antenna. We want you to turn your chest and shoulders open to the right sideline, right? So that's the simple technique. Open, in volleyball language, open your chest and shoulders. Specifically for us, it's like we want the athlete to feel how to do that. And when you do that, you are using your abdominal muscles, core muscles, back muscles, all the muscles kind of rotate and get stretched. Turn your chest and shoulders to the right sideline. You're immediately going to hit the ball harder. And because you're using a lot of other muscles, you're taking a lot of stress off the hitting shoulder, the right shoulder at this point in time.
Right. Okay. So for these right hand hitters, let's get maybe a little bit deeper into it. What are some ideal arm motion that then they go through while in this position?
Yeah, cool. And for those folks who are going to be lucky enough to see this, both you and I are going to show some visuals here and some movements of what we're doing. One of the first things in terms of this technique is most people, once again, they pull their arm back. And if I'm just sitting here myself showing a motion, if I'm moving my right arm back, but my chest and shoulders, there we go, aren't actually turning, then all I'm using once again is my arm, right? And we want you to think of this differently. Here's one of the exercises we'll do that we'll actually teach. So here's a little free technique, right, from Power Core 360 is this. Cross your arms and basically take your arms, or take your body, turn your chest and shoulders towards the right sideline. And notice my hands and arms are going along for the ride. So during, do the same thing so they can see it on you. Just turn your chest and shoulders to your right, correct? So if you're a lefty, you're turning to the left sideline. For a right-handed hitter, you're going to turn your chest and shoulders, and my arms are just going along for the ride. I haven't done anything with my arm yet. I'm using the turn of my chest and shoulders to load into the big muscles of my core, which are going to allow me to hit the ball harder once my arm really gets moving and gets engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once they do this and they move to the right sideline, what comes next in that hitting motion?
Yeah, so we kind of talk about the arm. It's something I coined years ago. We call it the arm action 1, 2, 3s, the arm movements 1, 2, 3s. The first one, step one, is this. As you're turning your chest and shoulders to the right, just allow your arm, your hitting arm, right hander in this right arm in this case, to just turn with the chest and shoulders. And notice that in this case, my right hand and arm are kind of underneath what we'll call the shoulder line. I'm using my hands to give a visual here. The shoulder line is an imaginary line that goes from my left shoulder to my right. If you took a stick and put it on there, you're going to notice it's kind of tilted, right? And so as I'm turning my chest and shoulders to the right, my hitting arm, my right arm is just going with my elbow, right elbow, underneath the shoulder line. So I turn my shoulder, my arms are going with it, but my right arm, the first movement of the arm action 1, 2, 3s, the number one is, as I turn my chest and shoulders to the right, the arm is just turning and actually going with the turn of the chest and shoulders to the right. So I think first, not to rush that. That's a really good drill even for an athlete to do for 10 reps, 20 reps. Slow, we're not worried about speed right now. We're just trying to like learn how to perform this specific movement, the arm action number one.
Right. Okay. So then they uncross their arms, they take it out, and they get ready. This would be like getting ready to be in that load position, I would assume.
Correct. It's the first load. And once again, I'll give a little bit more information or introduction here. The arm action 1, 2, 3s, here's the deal. A lot of volleyball hitters, they take their arm up like in this simple little movement, and all they do is like pull it back and swing it through like it's just turn back and go through forward, right? And actually, if you break the arm mechanics down into 3 different steps instead of 1 or 2, you're actually going to engage more of the muscles around the arm, chest, and shoulder. You're going to hit the ball harder, spread the forces out, so you hit harder, protect your shoulder, you have less chance of shoulder pain at the same time. That's a little bit more complex, but at the end result, you're going to hit harder, hit better, and take the stress off your shoulder. So arm action 1 is you're correct. You're turning your chest and shoulders to your right. The arm's going with it. The right elbow is staying down underneath the shoulder line in this point in time.
Mm-hmm. I think this is something that we feel a lot of resistance about, especially on our social media, is that you can't hit high, you can't contact the ball high if you're loading low. I know we'll probably get into that later on once we kind of talk about the hitting mechanics a little bit further. But so everybody here, if you have any sort of comments to that, or if you've been taught that before, let us know, and let us know what your thoughts about it are, and we can maybe have a little bit of a dialogue there. But Billy, I'll let you continue on here.
So that's fine, and let's introduce a term to that point, because it is, people get confused with that, and this whole movement in sports or in sports training is considered a counter movement, right? In this case, before I actually rotate forward and bring my arm up and elbow up to make contact, we turn away. And it's that counter movement where we turn the body away, we turn the chest and shoulders to the right sideline, that stretches the abdominal muscles. The muscles will go from my rib cage down to my pelvis. And those muscles are actually being stretched. The counter movement is so important to create not only force, but explosive force. And I'm going to keep it simple right now, but that counter movement happens if you throw a football. You throw a football, you don't see a quarterback stand there and just raise their arm up and throw the ball. They turn their chest and shoulders away. Their eyes are on their target, but they're turning their chest away. Then they're going to step, turn their hips, turn their chest and shoulder, and here comes the elbow and the arm and the ball at the end. Hit a tennis ball, hit an overhead smash, throw a baseball, throw a javelin, throw anything overhead. There's in any sports movement, before you jump, there's a counter movement. You squat down before you jump up. If you're going to hit, turn your body away. That counter movement, or the movement in the opposite direction. And then we use the word load. That's how you're loading into the muscles, not only the arm, chest, and shoulder, but the core, the upper body, the lower body, depending on how you're using your lower body. That's such a huge key in terms of creating power. We haven't went to contact the ball yet, right? So we'll get to the high elbow piece. There is a high elbow we teach. It's just, once again, it's not in the setup. It's not back here. We're loading and turning away from the net in this case, with the chest and shoulders to the right sideline, to get the big muscles of the core engaged. And once again, when they get loaded and engaged, it's like driving a Corvette with a 600 horsepower engine under the hood versus a small little, 70cc engine and that's kind of what your arm and shoulder is by itself. It can create some power, but you can create a lot more power if you fire up the legs, the hips, the butt, the core, and the chest, arm, and shoulder. Now you're really cooking with gas, as we like to say. Now you're really creating a lot of force, a lot of arm speed, a lot of ball speed.
Awesome. Yeah, that's some great points there. So what comes next after we have the one out of the three? So this is number one. What comes after this point in the hitting?
Yeah, so I'll explain it. And unfortunately, we're going to get into a little bit of some anatomical terms, but people can now go and reference that. If you go on Google like everybody does, and you want to go Google something, then Google external shoulder rotation. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. So as I open up the arm action one, turn to the right sideline, turn the chest and shoulder, elbow comes down under the shoulder line. Then here's the next piece. The right shoulder with the elbow bent at 90 degrees, not in here, not less than 90 degrees. The right shoulder is going to rotate, externally rotate, which means the hand's coming up, the elbow staying down underneath that shoulder line. And that's really what we call arm action two. It's external shoulder rotation. This is a piece that, from a lot of people, they miss the external rotation, right? We're adding this in a way that it puts the shoulder in a position where it stretches the muscles, what's called the pectoralis major. It is the largest muscle on the front side of the chest. Super important in terms of hitting or throwing overhead to create more power. And when you just use a high elbow and just do an arm swing, most of the time the pec major never gets stretched. It never gets loaded. So you're leaving a lot of power on the table. And you're asking now a bunch of smaller muscles to create all that force on the arm or on the ball. And that's one of the reasons you may have shoulder pain. Rotate open. Number two, go into external rotation, right? That elbow stays down, and you may feel, go ahead and do this now, Jared. I'm going to have you do it. So turn away. Yep. Keep your belly button facing kind of the antenna. So wherever you start with your belly button, turn your chest and shoulder away. Bring your left shoulder, your hand up in external rotation. You'll notice that she's doing that once again. If you guys are out there watching, the hitting elbow, in this case, it looks like your left elbow. I don't know if that's your right or left.
I think it just flipped.
It may be flipped around, but her hitting arm in this case would be at 90 degrees, right? And her shoulder rotating up. That's arm action number two. By the way, when we teach it, we teach one of them. We teach arm action motion first, right? The shoulder turn. We get that. We get some proficiency there. We're not in a hurry to now cloud the athlete's memory, right? And start adding the second step until they've kind of got the first step down.
Yeah, definitely. So we're opening our chest and then we're lifting and externally rotating our shoulder. Then how do they get from here to then into a swinging motion?
Yeah, so we start with some of our methodology is we've taught them how to step, we've taught them how to turn their hips first. So there's some preliminary stuff that we've already taught the athlete when we're doing a clinic or doing a lesson or a master class with them. But the short answer here is once I went to one, I went to two, which is external rotation. My body has already started to take a step forward, and now my belly button is turning as a right-hander from right antenna to left. And as they're doing that, as they're stepping and turning their belly button from right antenna to left, you'll see this happen in the air. The best hitters in the world, you'll see their arm going up into external shoulder rotation as their belly button's turning from right to left. And that creates this big stretch, what we call the stretch shortening cycle in the training world, in their abdominal muscles, and it happens in the chest and shoulder muscles over here. So the body, this is what's really cool, really get into the scientific weeds for just a second. I promise to come out quickly. That stretch shortening cycle, also known as the myotatic reflex, it's built into your brain and nervous system. You don't have to teach yourself to do it. The body, the sensors and the muscles of your chest, shoulder, and core will automatically fire on their own. Fire your core muscles, fire your chest and arm and internal rotator muscles on your arm and shoulder faster when this happens in the right sequence and the right timing. So anyway, this external shoulder rotation, turning the belly button away. Then as your arm starts to come forward, now that this is a real key, here comes the high elbow. The right elbow is going to go from external rotation. Now the elbow is going to come up next to the right ear, if I'm a right-handed hitter. And now my elbow's coming up, and my elbow's coming up followed, and my elbow now should be bent at an angle less than 90 degrees, right? You can see that here. I came up at 90 degrees and to external rotation. Now as my elbow's coming up towards my ear, my elbow's really bending. That is stretching the tricep muscle. And that stretch shortening cycle now, if we do this all correctly, is also now happening in the tricep muscle. After the core's worked, after the chest and shoulders work, after the internal rotators have worked, now this is where the science comes in. Now the right timing is the tricep muscle stretches, elbow comes up, and of course, if you've worked with us, we teach the athletes to keep it simple instead of all this scientific stuff. We talk about giving Shaq a high five, right? So everybody knows who Shaquille O'Neal is, and once again, we tell the athlete, give Shaq a high five. So your elbow's going to have to come up really high, and then your hand's going to have to come up really high to give Shaq a high five. So there we are. You'll notice my body's tilting to the left. My right shoulder is now higher than my left. All the good hitters get in this position. And so this is the three motion with the elbow coming up towards the ear, and then elbow coming up, hand coming up to contact, out in front of the right shoulder, giving Shaq a high five. There's other things going on here with the body, but that's the gist of the 1, 2, 3s, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's some really good information that a lot of people can take if you're looking to improve your volleyball, just your arm mechanics in general, and protect your shoulder a little bit. Or if you are having shoulder pain currently, this is a really great way to just address that pain, I guess. Also, we got a comment from somebody on YouTube, AF Face Softball. They said, I love Power Core going again in Houston. We are so excited to have you. Thank you for tuning in and commenting today. What she's talking about is our Houston clinic. And all of our summer clinics are really filling up fast. Sorry for this little tangent, but she brings up a good point that if you do want to get into our clinics, I believe 19 of them are already sold out completely. And so there's very limited spots left. So make sure you go check that out really quick if you are looking to get into one of our clinics and learn more about what we're talking about today. But back to what Billy and I are talking about today. We have the 1, 2, 3s down. Now that we have that down, maybe let's move into a different part of the swing, maybe more of the shoulder blade positioning and the strength of your actual shoulder blade. What does that actually look like? How would you start that, Billy?
Yeah, so let's back up a giant step. You're right. That's where we're going. And we just talk about, strength and conditioning. What's the role of it? And in this case, we're talking about specific to a volleyball hitter, right? Trying to create and strengthen not so much muscles, but strengthen these movements, right? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. How do I actually strengthen those movements and not get carried away with exactly what muscles I'm training? I want to strengthen and speed up all these arm action 1, 2, 3s so that the shoulders turn faster, the elbow comes up faster. Well, it's a strength and conditioning need. A little bit of some science. Most young athletes, a lot of athletes in general, but a lot of young, both male and female club or high school volleyball players have an imbalance in the muscles on the front side of their shoulder. And I'm going to demonstrate it here. The right shoulder and shoulder blade, you'll oftentimes see it kind of rotated forwards and up and in, right? And so their shoulders in a compromised position. A lot of them walk around like this. Many of them do. You can walk into a volleyball club, walk into practice, walk into a tournament qualifier, and you see the right and left shoulders of these kids forward, rounded. Their shoulders are in a compromised position. They're hitting like that. There you go. So Darian, show that. And right now that you can see her shoulder and shoulder blade kind of hunch forward. You can't even see her chest there because everything's forward. And what's commonly thought of in the strength conditioning world is that the muscles on the front side of the chest and shoulder are really short and tight. I'll tell you, they're also weak, right? But basically, they get rounded forward. What's really going on then is that the muscles behind the shoulders, underneath the shoulder blade on the upper back, they're really weak. They don't have a lot of strength. They don't have a lot of endurance. And so you'll get winging, right? You'll see the shoulder blades kind of come out, and you'll see them actually moving away from a lot of athletes as they stand there. You'll actually see their shoulder blades, part of the shoulder blade, like tipping out and tipping up. We call that like winging, right? It's just showing you visually that the shoulder and shoulder blade is not in really a good position to generate and tolerate a lot of torque, a lot of hit and swings, right? Um, so how do you fix that? It's a strength and conditioning issue. It's not just a matter of going in and stretching the muscles on the front side of the shoulder, right? It's really more important, more effectively, if you go onto the muscles behind the chest and shoulders, underneath the shoulder blades that connect back there, and teach those athletes to actually strengthen the muscles that will rotate the shoulder blades back, set them down. And the term we use is connect your shoulder blades to your rib cage back there, because for most of them, their shoulder blades, once again, are tilted up and away. We want them to learn how to strengthen the shoulder blade muscles to pull the shoulder blades down and back. And then what you'll see is the chest will open up, and you see good power hitters. You see world-class hitters in the air, male or female. You're going to see when they go up in the air and they go into this number 2 position, you're going to see how their chest is open. You'll see that in football quarterbacks. You'll see that in Major League Baseball pitchers. The chest opens up as the arm comes up. It's because all those little muscles between the shoulder blades, under the shoulder blades, on the upper back, lower back, are pulling the shoulder blades down and back. It repositions the shoulder blade. It repositions the arm. It allows them, here's really the key, it allows them to hit harder with their shoulder and arm in a position to generally generate more arm speed, more ball speed, hit the ball harder if you would, but protect the shoulder in the process. If you're walking around with shoulder pain and you're a hitter, once again, go look in the mirrors, right? Go look, and you don't even need to take your shirt off. You can see right now, like Darren was showing you right there, you got it. Her shoulders are rounded forward. If I walk up behind her and I just gently kind of cued her and pulled her shoulder blades down and back, then you're going to start to see her open up her chest. And to do that, she's using all those little weak muscles that are behind the chest and shoulders that are typically weak on young athletes. They need to be not only strengthened, but they need to have endurance, because, right, it's not just a matter of strengthening them and I pull them back there once and then 10 seconds later I get thrown back forward. I got to have the endurance to pull my shoulder blades down and back and keep them there. Have the endurance not only to do that once, but many times throughout the day. Posturally, to hold them there, more importantly, in a match, to be able to continue to pull my arm back. When my arm goes up in external rotation, man, that shoulder blade ought to be sucking down, flattening down against your rib cage. If it does that, you're going to hit the ball hard. Your shoulder's going to feel a ton better. And you're going to have a long, healthy career with your shoulder. If you don't, you're going to have shoulder pain, front, side, back of your shoulder, wherever you're going to get it. Those are signs that mechanically or strength and conditioning there's a muscle imbalance going on, right? And we need to get those muscles on the backside stronger and improve their endurance so they can position and move the shoulder blade, the scap, if you would, and the arm throughout the swing.
Yeah, and I think this is something I didn't learn. Glenn, we'll get to your question in a second, but this is something I didn't learn until later on when I don't even know if I learned it in college or until I met Billy, honestly. But I know growing up playing volleyball and throughout college, I always got told, like, you have such bad posture. Your shoulders are always so rounded forward. But little did I know, like, I just wasn't strengthening these muscles in my back at all. And I was really strengthening up here. So then I was just curled up like this all of the time. And so, athletes, if you are getting told that from your parents or other people, just maybe look in the mirror and be like, oh, yeah, I'm really rounded, but that's just a muscle imbalance and something that I can work to fix. We got a question on YouTube, Billy, from Glenn here saying, do you
See it.
suggest weightlifting to fix the issue? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, weightlifting is really an important piece of it. But once again, specifically, what weightlifting or strength training exercises are you going to do? If you go with a lot of strength coaches, you're going to go in the gym and do the big four lifts, and one of those might be bench press, right? That's going to help give you strength and endurance, right, to the muscles on the front side of the chest. But for an athlete that's already rounded forward, you're not hitting the right muscle groups, right? Those muscles don't need to be shortened anymore, which is what strengthening will tend to do to them from doing, flies or anything where the hands and arms in a pressing movement going forward. It's the muscles behind and underneath and between the shoulder blades that need. So more of pulling actions, right, are really going to be more important to help start doing that. If you're looking for a good general strengthening exercise, like a seated or a standing row, even if it's 2 arms at a time, but be careful, especially the guys that are listening, because guys tend to use the guns. They tend to use the biceps. They're using the wrong muscles. They start using the biceps and they start pulling the weight forward, and my shoulder blades haven't moved at all. Relax your biceps and let your hands and arms pull on a weight and pull your shoulder blades down and back to where you feel the muscles underneath and behind your shoulders. And then watch yourself in the mirror. You ought to be able to see your shoulder blades repositioning, pulling down and back, and you ought to see your chest opening up. Be careful, because you can have a person sitting just like I am right now doing a seated pull, but they're not using the right muscles. They're using biceps versus getting into the right muscles underneath between the shoulder blades that we really want to target and focus. So just general weightlifting may or may not help. You might actually make it worse. Get on the right shoulder, get on the right muscles, really focus on the muscles of the upper back. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing some chest exercises, but if all you're doing is watching what's the popular stuff and you're doing, bench press and inclines, everything, that's all, once again, maybe making the situation worse. The fix for a lot of shoulder pain is the positioning of the shoulder blade, get it down and back, develop that strength and endurance to get it back there, make the shoulder blade, the scap move appropriately, have the endurance to do that throughout matches as you're swinging, hitting, blocking, and everything else you're doing in a volleyball match.
Yeah, some really great tips there, Billy. I think one thing that we haven't talked about with the whole posture and shoulder is, how does the posture of rounded and slumped forward affect spines on athletes or for anybody
Well,
else?
yeah, is it the cart or the horse? So let's get into a real situation, especially for female athletes, right? Like, I had a daughter who was 6 foot in middle school. A lot, Darian, you probably were as well. A lot of girls obviously grow before the boys, and in middle school, going into high school, they want to fit in. They're already growing. They're taller than the boys already. So what are they doing? They don't, they're stepping forward, dropping their head. They're trying to fit down where the boys haven't quite grown yet, right? That's taking the spine and taking it forwards, and then watch what happens. I haven't moved my shoulders at all, but as soon as I slump, my shoulders come with it, right? And so the fix for this is strength and conditioning. Once again, it is like we talked about the shoulder and arm muscles on the upper back. Let's work those to open up, but it's also about the spinal muscles, and not so much arching back going the other direction. Just get tall. So if I ask you, Darren, to get tall in the chair, take your head up towards the ceiling, get as tall as you can in the chair. Oh, look what happens to your chest and shoulders. Some of the muscles that we're trying to work on the upper back fire. Muscles to the spine, through the core, a lot of them are turning on. And this is what we're wanting, is a long, tall, elongated spine. Not necessarily when we see athletes doing RDLs and back extensions. you can see their chest and shoulders going back. They're really arching their back, but their spine isn't any longer or taller. And so, yeah, they're working maybe some low back muscles. But if you do this right, you can do some exercises where you can get long, tall. You're going to work numerous muscle groups all at once. You're going to improve your posture. You're going to hit the ball harder. You'll take care of the health of your shoulder and your back at the same time.
Yeah, and I know back and shoulder are definitely some of the main complaints that we hear, at least on social media and at clinics. So, if those are some pain points for you as an athlete or parents, if that, or coaches, if that's for any of your athletes are feeling maybe some of those pain points, look at what is their posture just on a day-to-day basis. And how can you take little steps at starting to improve that? What kind of exercises do you need to start implementing in there every day?
Yeah. And Darian, on that point too, let's go the other end of this. So, we do it in the clinics. We'll catch a tall middle school girl or high school or whatever the case is, and once again, they're slumping down trying to fit in. It's like, dude, you can't coach height, right? If you're tall, use that height, because that's what that coaches are looking for probably first in a lot of athletes. How tall are they, right? How high can they jump? How high can they breach? How high can they hit, right? Some of that's a function of just how tall they are. So we'll tell them, own it. Use that height, own it, and you'll actually hit harder if your spine's long and tall. If your shoulder blades are down and back, you will immediately hit harder because your body, your shoulder blade, your spine are in a position they can actually turn faster, hit harder. Versus down here, if your shoulder and your back hurts, part of it is just your body telling you it doesn't like that position and you're stuck there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this was some great information today. If you have any shoulder pain or you're trying to avoid shoulder pain, these are some great tips that you can definitely start using in your training. But I want to move on to social questions today. We have quite a few. So we will try to get through everyone's questions. But if you guys have any other questions that we aren't saying already, make sure to comment them and we will be sure to answer them right away. But to start, we recently had a video on Instagram go pretty viral. I think it got something like 600,000 views. And this video was talking about off-season training and how during the off-season, which is coming up for a lot of people, for volleyball players, at least I should say, club is right about ending. You're maybe playing in some beach tournaments or doing some camps, stuff like that. But it is the summer, and so you do have more of a typical off-season compared to maybe a school season. So, Billy, one of the comments that we got on this video, and actually a majority of the comments on this video, it's kind of sounded something like this. It was a lot of athletes talking about their off season or lack of off season. So this comment specifically says, off season, what is that? I only know school season, club season, and beach season. So I think this comment maybe got like 600 likes or something like that, which is crazy with how many people were agreeing with that. And we get it. Like, you guys do have school club and then maybe you do play some beach in the summer. But Billy, what do you say to kids that say they can't fit any more training in or fit training in to actually get better? They're only ever playing in season. Why is that important for them to do that? But also, what's your reaction to this whole thing?
Yeah, well, I would tend to agree with them. I mean, I think this is one of the things that's maybe happening with youth sports, period. But if I've been around volleyball for 20 something years and I see it, especially the kids who, are really making great progress. They're tall, they can jump, they're dynamic, they're hitting the ball hard. Those kids are playing year round, and it's too much, right? And so some of the shoulder pain and back pain they're having, yeah, some of it could be like we've talked about here, mechanics, poor technique. Some of it's just overuse. You can have the best mechanics in the world, all the strength conditioning, all the proper muscle balance and all that. But if you're just literally swinging too much, too far, too much, too hard, and you're not getting any break, your tissues are going to break down. The first warning is probably some inflammation, which may show up as pain somewhere around the shoulder, in the back, spine, wherever you might be feeling it. Those are warning signs, right? To be heated and not to be, well, it's just what we do. We can't get away. Well, you need to get away. Any certified strength conditioning coach is going to write a strength conditioning program in what we call cycles or phases. They're going to look at a year-long program for any athlete, and if they're building for a year-long, they're going to build in rest, recovery, and transitional types of training. Mean, if all you do is train your arm swing or jumping, and you did that 365 days a year, you're going to hit a point where, yes, you're going to face over risk or overuse injuries or pain. And physically, your body breaks down. you're not actually getting as good as you think you could be. You're not getting as good as you could be because you're overusing it. The muscles, the tendons, the tissues are just not recovering and growing because they're in a state of inflammation, right? There's another side of this, and that's the mental side. If you're playing year round, you get burned out, right? I mean, how many kids do you see that start off in middle school or grade school or something like that? And by the time they get into high school, because they're playing club, and then they're going into high school and sand. And if they're really good, they're probably playing on some youth national preparation team. They're overusing themselves physically and mentally. The same thing's happening, and so they burn out. Sophomore, junior, senior year in high school, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. They're burnt out. A good coach who's preparing and developing athletes got to pay attention to say you've got to have rest and recovery. You've got to have some transitional training where you get off the court and you stop doing those same movements. I don't care if it's the greatest mechanics in the world and opening your chest and closing your hips and elbow coming up and all this stuff. If that's all you do, even with the best strength conditioning, it's going to be too much. You've got to get away from it. You've got to get recovery. You've got to get physically and mentally refreshed, or you're going to get injured and you're going to get stale mentally. Your performance is going to tank, right? So we've got to let go of and the people that have control over designing when things start, club, high school, sand, and all that. At some point, it would be nice if they'd actually talk to each other because athletes need rest and recovery.
Yeah, and I kind of want to make another point to this too. You definitely need an off season, but Billy, what about the side of it for, like, let's say our master class, for example, an 8-week master class where you're going through and you're trying to really improve on your hitting. For an athlete that wants to go through that, and maybe they are playing school, club, and beach, when is the best time, or how do they start putting that into their schedule without overtraining, I guess?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I mean, so we have the question all the times. Parents are coming in and they're asking, they're looking for blocks, training blocks, right? A period of 6 weeks, 8 weeks to go do the 8-week master class or the 12-week vertical jump. And in the perfect world, you would do that. You wouldn't be in high school. You wouldn't be in club. You wouldn't be in beach. You'd have an 8 or 10-week window wide open where that's what you could focus on. There are a couple of those windows throughout the year, but they're few and far between. Where you can do that, it's really important, because otherwise, if all the athlete, the volleyball player is doing is going from beach to indoor to club to high school to whatever, and they're never actually developing, then they're not necessarily ever really getting better. They're just playing, right? And there's something to be said about, I improve my performance, I get better at the game by being in the match and seeing that and responding to that. But if you're never really focused on your strength, your conditioning, getting to muscle balance, learning how to jump, learning how to hit, how to land, you're not really developing, or you're developing at a much slower rate than if you actually had an 8, 10, or 12-week window where you could focus on it. So as you know, in the master classes, we're coming up on a window right now for a 17 or 18-year-old athlete who maybe got done in April or May with club season. Maybe now they've got an 8 or 10 or 12-week window there. And so they should be taking advantage of that right now and taking their things like vertical jump or power hitting or whatever they're trying to do. Now is one of those windows throughout the year where you really have the time, and hopefully not competing with a lot of other things, to go develop their vertical jump, their hitting, whatever the case is. You have some other windows throughout the year, maybe aren't as long as the one we're coming up from May through, almost August. If you're going to college or going to high school, you've got about a 3-month window now to develop. We will tell a lot of athletes, and we're honest with this when the parents call in and they're interested in high school season or club season and getting into a master class for power hitting revert, more than likely they're going to have to do something on top of club or on top of high school to get better, because once again, there's not necessarily a lot of individual development that happens inside of high school or club. Those are team activities. You're trying to get your team prepared to go and compete. Well, individual development is important, so you've got to find some windows. And once again, we're challenged here. How do we do that and not burn them out physically, not create overuse injuries, not overtrain them mentally as well? If you're working with someone that's really good, they should be talking to you guys about, okay, rest and recovery periods and what rest and recovery means. It doesn't mean you're just not in practice today. It might mean that in transitional training, I'll go off the rails for just a second, but I'll come back quick. Transitional training program for any athlete, for a volleyball athlete, means you're probably in a 2 or 3 week period after the end of club season. Maybe club got over for you in April or May. Take 2 or 3 weeks to get off the volleyball court, probably get off the court, period. Go do some cross training things, or even you go and do some general fitness for 2 or 3 weeks, right? You get in the pool, you get on a bike, you go do things that are completely different from volleyball. So physically, it's not the same movements over and over that they're got your shoulder lit up with inflammation, or your back or your knee or something else. Go do some different movements. Start addressing some of those muscle imbalances that you've created being in club for 3 or 4 or 5 months, right? And they haven't been addressed. It's important that they do that. So those transitional types of training programs are super important. And the last thing I'll say on that is, one of the things we're doing for a lot of our athletes who are highly motivated with us is helping them try to navigate. And it's not only the athlete, but it's the parent as well, trying to help them navigate. When do you do what? Like, if you've got a daughter or son that's coming in at 13 or 14, they will oftentimes tell them, because a parent will come to us and say, all right, she has to do power hitting, she has to do vertical jump, she has to do strength and conditioning, she has to do private training for digging, this and that. And we'll say, yeah, all those are probably good things sometime between the time she's 13 and 18, but you can't do them all at once. And once again, we have a couple calls a week. A parent wanted to say, well, can we do the vertical jump and power hitting at the same time? No, it's too much. Either one of them are a huge commitment by themselves to get the athlete better, and they're already probably doing that on top of club or high school or something else. So you got to be able to focus, you got to be able to do the work, and find those windows of time to develop it. Because if you don't, you're just going to kind of motor along and you're going to play a lot, but you've got to find some time to train and actually get better at your individual skills and mechanics and strength.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to reiterate a little bit of what you said there, where if you do have maybe a point of your season where it's a little bit lighter, or it's obviously not like, for example, if you're in school season, it's not right during the state championship is the first week you're starting new training. You just have to find that right point, and a point where the athlete feels like they can handle it mentally, physically, emotionally, all those things. Is that correct, Billy?
Yeah, and for us, let me try to just boil it down to a couple simple take-home messages. When an athlete's 13 or 14 in volleyball, we're really pushing them and pushing the parents. It's like, go learn power hitting mechanics. Just focus on the mechanics first, right? Learn how to hit. If you're going to go into vertical jump first, great. Learn how to jump, learn how to land, and we'll build strength on top of that, power and speed, and focus on that, right? And then when you get that foundation down, you can move on to the next thing. You've got 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, depending on your age, to develop these skill sets and these movements and the mechanics. If you try to do them all at once, as a parent, you push your kid into that, they're going to hate volleyball very quickly. They're going to be out of it, right? And once again, this is one of the things we try to help athletes and parents navigate is, when do you do what? At the younger ages, focus on mechanics. When they get to be 15 and 16, both male and female, now their body's really ready for more aggressive types of strength training. Build a foundation first, though, when they're 13 or 14. They're ready for the strength and conditioning stuff in high school, great. Do it, and then be really specific about what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, moving on to our next social question. And again, if there's any other social questions that you guys have today, let us know and we will answer them as best as we can. The next question that we have is, while you attack, your hand should be stiff. In serve, you need to have your hand relaxed. This was more of, I guess, a comment than a question, but I wanted, it was under one of our posts. So I wanted us to kind of address this and give our Power Core 360 thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I'd actually go the other direction. What we see happening is, of course, at the younger ages, kids are trying to figure out how to get a serve over the net to have, quote, success, right? Be able to have a chance of scoring a point and winning a match. But what's typically taught is more of a floater serve, right? And so the wrist is stiff, the arm is stiff. There's typically not a big body rotation, a counter turn like we talk about, counter rotation. There's not a lot of rotation going on. When you hit with a stiff wrist, you tend to hit a floater, and that ball coming across, if you're playing defense, it's like a knuckleball in baseball. It's a great shot, right? It's a good ball to be able to hit on the ground. When you go in the air, the problem is, if everything was stiff, you can hit the ball hard that way. it's harder on the shoulder, harder on the back, but the flight of the ball might come through with velocity. But if that ball is just knuckling like that and you hit it with a lot of velocity, it's a really good chance that ball is going past the end line and going out of bounds. The ideal ball that we teach for power hitting is, we call it a spinner ball, right? And we want there to be top spin on the ball, so when the ball comes over the net, right, the ball has a chance to go over the net, maybe go over the defender's hands with velocity, and then still drop into the court and score a point, right? Otherwise, it doesn't matter how hard you hit the ball. If the ball is going out of bounds, you're not going to play a lot. Somebody that can hit the ball with velocity and get the ball in play is going to find their way on the court, right? To hit a ball, a spinner ball, it's not stiff wrist. It's not even stiff arm. It is relaxed, loose arm action, wrist action, fingers action, shoulders. With all those arm action mechanics we went through today, if someone did this, and you guys can, if you're out there right now, you can try doing this, is you could sit there and turn and create a lot of tension in your arm and go through those motions. And it's not going to feel very dynamic. And if you try to do it fast, you're going to realize there's not a lot of arm speed. We do want arm speed. If you want to hit the ball hard, then the arm needs to come through fast. The faster the arm comes through, the harder you're going to hit the ball, assuming the hand and arm are relaxed, right? And the wrist and fingers are relaxed. To hit a topspin ball, this needs to be loosey-goosey. So if you see us in a clinic, oftentimes we're going over to the athlete and moving their arm and say, number one, relax your shoulders, right? And let your arm go up, and feel when you go in external rotation how your hand and fingers just kind of want to almost flop. And as you go through a hitting motion or throwing motion, we'll teach them to feel relaxed. And then we'll try to take that into a swing rotational movement where they're actually swinging, right? Where they can feel how to do that with a relaxed arm. Because ultimately, if that arm's coming through relaxed, we're going to develop arm speed, and we're going to develop arm speed that's going to allow us to hit a ball with top spin on it. It's going to come through with velocity, drop in, and score a point, and everybody's happy.
Yeah. So just to reiterate the question was, or the comment was, just having your hand stiff while hitting, and we're saying actually the opposite, to have it all loose while you're hitting, so that way you can get that top spin on the ball. And then when you're serving, that's when we see more of a stiff structure in your arm hand, then be able to hit that float. So kind of opposite there, but good to just address and say what we thought on that. But that is all the time that we have for today. I want to thank everybody who listened in and made some comments and asked questions. Thank you guys so much. If you guys want to listen to more of these, we are actually moving. This is our first Tuesday doing a VolleyTalk. Usually we're on Wednesday afternoons. Now we are moving to Tuesday afternoons. So from here on out, the rest of the summer, we will be Tuesday afternoons for all of the live streams. Just so you know, Tuesday at 3 p.m. And yeah, we have a lot of good, fun content planned for this summer, including going to some of the new things that we're announcing pretty soon, which will be really exciting, and showing you guys some of the behind the scenes on that, and having Billy kind of explain things. And we'll show some of our clinics. We'll show a lot of different fun things. So make sure you stay tuned, set your alarms to watch these live streams. You can also watch them afterwards. So thank you guys for listening in, and I hope you guys all have a great afternoon.